while we're waiting for Galina to get on, I am going to introduce Barbara Karchmer, who is the president of the board. And she's going to just do a short welcome and get the meeting officially going. And again, thank you everybody for your patience. As you can imagine, there's a lot to figure out between Ukraine and blackouts and technology and Zoom, even years into doing this process. So thank you for your patience. Barbara?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our annual meeting of Action for Post-Soviet Jewry, and a special warm welcome to our Ukrainian colleagues. In spite of the technology glitches, it's actually really incredible that we can even have this conversation across the oceans. I think to get started, Debbie is going to give an overview of the meeting, and then we will proceed from there. Debbie, let me turn it over to you.
Okay. So just a quick few things. As soon as we get the interpretation up and running, we will just share a little bit about how that works, so that if somebody wants to choose to listen in Russian, they can. We do have Shauna with us, who is our Zoom operator and wonderful with technology. So if you have any questions, you can direct message her through the chat button on the bottom, and she can help with any technical difficulties that we have. I see that Galina is in the Zoom, so that we are making progress there. So that's exciting. Welcome, Galina. We are going to go straight through between our board business and then into our guest speaker. So the way the meeting is going to work is we're going to start with a short business meeting. We're going to have a quick presentation about our budget for the year, and our treasurer is going to present the budget. And then we're going to officially elect our board for the year for our officers, and then a 3-year term for our regular board members. We will have an update. Thankfully that Galina is here.
Can you hear me, Debbie?
About our work in Ukraine and
can anyone hear me?
Nonprofit in Ukraine, Action for Ukraine. I'll give a quick report about our work here in the States through Action for Post-Soviet Jewry. And then one of our board members who has been involved in our theory of change process, Asia, will introduce our theory of change facilitator, Gavin, and the process. And then Gavin will do a presentation about our work with that has been unbelievably wonderful, and really is going to help our organization move forward. We'll have a quick, after his presentation, we'll have time for a little bit of a discussion with that.
Debbie, can you hear me?
A bit about Action's 50th celebration, and then we'll conclude the meeting. So thank you all for being here this morning. And with that, I am going to turn the meeting over to our board treasurer, Sergey Brody, who is going to give a brief update on our budget for the year.
Hello, everybody. This will be a very quick overview of our budget. We adopted this budget in June of this year, and it's prepared by budget committee and then approved by the board. Can you go to the next slide, please? It consists of 3 major parts. One is the budget itself. Second is how we arrived to this budget, and approximate breakdown of our planned expenses. Next slide. So this is the numbers, the very bottom line, sort of we expect and we hope and we struggle and we work and we hope and everything to obtain a revenue of total of $450,000. And I will show on the next slide how it relates to the previous experience. It's right here. You can see the first line is total revenue. And so we were, okay, in 21-22, we were at 347. Then we went down for 2 years. And so for 24-25, we are planning to return to the revenue. This is sort of fundraising revenue of 350. If you jump at the bottom, the second from the bottom line, it is a miscellaneous income. And in this case, we can see 100K there, and 100K is a combination of about 50K that left in our budget from the previous year, and another 50K that we were, the board authorized to use from the loan amount that we obtained around the COVID time. So if you take 350 plus 100K at the second from the bottom line, this is where 450 total on the previous slide obtained. If you go to the next line, is we expect no, the previous slide. Okay, thanks. The programs. So the revenue again here is 350 plus 100. The total programs, it is the things that we classify as delivering help to our clients in Ukraine, including goods, monies, services, and everything else. And the total operational expenses is the money that mostly are spent in the US. It's our payroll, our rent, our electricity, computers, and so on. So if you look at these four numbers, then 350 minus 208 minus 239 plus 100, you end up with the balance of, we expect to be in the black with $1,700 by the end of the year. If we go to the next slide, this is how we think our income is again built. We have restricted grants and funds which when we obtain with specific goals defined by the donors. We expect to obtain about 200K of unrestricted donations. As I said, there is a carryover from the previous year and from the endowment from our savings, and the total income becomes 450. Next slide, please. That's it. So basically, this is how we think, and the biggest. It's very easy to spend money. We know how to do it very well, and we do it all the time, and we do it efficiently. The challenge is to really get this $350,000 in fundraising, and this is something that is sort of our appeal to everybody on this call and wider to help us in our activity. I'm done.
Okay,
Thank you, Sergey.
all right, thank you very much, Sergey. And I think now we'll do the rest of our business, but I'd like to turn to Tanya, who is part of the nominating committee, and get her report, and then we can proceed with the election.
So first, I want to begin by thanking the nominating committee who worked diligently and thoughtfully. Thank you, Barbara, Boris, and I was also on the committee. I'm happy to say that nobody is stepping down from the board, which really indicates a commitment of the members to action.
Shauna, can you please put the nominating slides up for Tanya? Thank you.
So action for post-Soviet Jewry current bylaws state that the membership shall elect a president, a vice president, treasurer, and clerk for 1-year term or until their successors have been elected. So for the Barbara Karchmer as president, Carol Klingen as vice president, and Sergey Brood as treasurer, and Tanya Goldwyn as clerk. And the slate of directors nominated for election to a term ending at the annual meeting in 2027 is Evgenia Doctor, ending in 2027, Sergey Brood, Eri Magazanik, and Melinda Harrison, all ending in 2027. Thank you very much. Now, can we have a motion?
Yes, can we have a motion to elect the slate as presented by Tanya? I can't see.
Shauna, we can't see
I-
the,
Now I got myself unmuted. It's Carol and I make the motion to elect the slate as recommended.
And do we have a second?
Yes.
Do we have a
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to be able to see, somebody able to see the whole gallery so that we can count. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
I am voting yes.
wait, Shauna, are you there?
I'm here and I just took it off spotlight view so people can choose to see the entire gallery if they would
Okay.
like to do that.
And do you have the poll available for the board members to
I
vote
sure can
on?
launch that right now.
Okay, and wait, we have one more board member that's logging in right now. Okay. So just to be clear, this poll is for board members that are on the call right now.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have made that clear. So do you want us to do the slate approval, just to do the poll, or raise hands? I guess that's the question.
If we could do the poll, I think that would be the cleanest way to calculate the votes.
Okay, so would everybody, I think it should be on everybody's screen, the
Right.
poll. Okay, and if you will just, if you approve this, the slate or not, whatever, click that. And then also the officers, the second part of the poll, and then submit it. Who is going to tally this?
Whenever you would like me to close it out, I can tally it. Right now, 12 out of 13. Oh, it keeps changing. So far, everybody has approved everything and one person has abstained. It looks like we're waiting for a few more people to put it in.
Can't be just board members, remember.
For those that aren't allowed to vote, you can choose abstain, and that might help the numbers get to 100% or not when applicable. Debbie, how many board members do you have that should be voting?
Hold on a sec. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like there's 9, 10.
Well, 13 people have voted, so you
Okay.
probably got all the people, and it was unanimously approved.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody.
Are you fine with me ending the poll now and closing that for everybody?
Yes, thank you.
So I believe this is now our business meeting is concluded with the tallying of the votes. And I think I'd like to turn the meeting over for an update from Ella and Action for Ukraine.
Good afternoon to everyone, to the board. So before I start sharing information about Action for Ukraine activities, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you. So to Action PSJ board members for active support and engagement in in Ukraine. I mean, like in the work of Action in Ukraine, because you really impact a lot. So, and you are very supportive, and you are such a great help to people who really need it, especially now during the war, yeah, in Ukraine. So, and so we see symbolism in everything, yeah. So, and even the fact that now this presentation about Action for Ukraine, so is in blue and yellow colors. Yes, so and like these are the colors of the Ukrainian flag, and so I see it as a symbol of something real, a good sign. Yes, so like, and what you do is invaluable, and your support is really invaluable. So without you, we wouldn't be able to exist. So thank you, and we wouldn't be able to do everything, all these good things we do thanks to you. So our really sincere, heartiest gratitude to you for what you do. Thank you. Next slide, please. Situation in Ukraine. Well, today, 1,019 days of war have passed. During the first days of the war, we would never have thought that it could have been that long. So, and that it would bring so much destruction and death and whatever. So all the cities of our network of Action for Ukraine network are under constant shelling, missile attacks and drone attacks. So, and a great number of air raids during the day, so and during night. And now, so with winter approaching, well, winter has already come, yes. So, like Russia repeatedly targets our infrastructural objects like power stations, electric power stations, and hydroelectric stations, and all these places that are really vital for the functioning and operating of these local communities. So, and with winter and with cold weather, so we have again this regular blackouts and power outages can last up till 8 hours. Sometimes people do not have electricity 4 hours along in the morning and at night in the evening. So besides the fact that it impacts negatively household appliances like refrigerators, etc., so it also impacts negatively mental health of people, so of everyone, yeah, especially of elders, yes, of older people. So those pensioners, those older people, like in their genes, still have these fears engraved in their hearts and genes, sitting there since World War II, and now so they are immersed into the war, and their health is really not as good as it was years ago. But thank God that to date we can say that our elders, our wards, have not suffered, we're not injured. I mean, like we're not wounded. Yes, so the houses haven't been destroyed yet, thank God. So, but like it has happened to the neighboring communities, neighboring streets, houses, apartments, and so it's really very hard on our elders. So, and now these are real pictures of what is going on in all over the Ukraine, in any community of Ukraine. So this situation is really heartbreaking. So our elders are so I don't know, courageous, I would say, so, and try to be resilient. So, but they are really very much tired to live under this pressure of fear. And when you go to bed and you don't know if you're gonna wake up in the morning. So, and unfortunately, we don't know when it can end. And everyone is looking forward to positive changes. And also with regard to inauguration of a new president in the United States, who knows, maybe, so it will bring some positive decision making, so that it might help us finish, or I don't know, suspend this war for people, so to breathe out and to continue their lives. Next slide, please. So despite all what is going on in the country, so we continue our activities, continue our work. And we are implementing our projects. Like one of the biggest projects is mini grants, like micro grants for our elders. What is unique about this project? The uniqueness is that we give people, provide people with funds and give them the right to use them at their disposal. Yeah, so these are not restricted funds. Yeah, so they can use them so to whatever they need, because all of them have their individual needs, like specific and cutting edge needs. So I selected several pictures for you to see that someone needed medicine, someone needed grocery or whatever food. So someone bought something, I don't know, like some food that can be stored for a long time. So just in case of force majeure and like, or whatever emergency situation, to have this, I don't know, like canned products at home. And so our elders are really grateful for this project to us. And the difference between us and other funds is that we, as I have already mentioned, so are not restricting them to using these funds to some specific purposes. So we give them the right to choose what to spend this money for. So some people cover public utilities with these funds. So I want also to say that our elders are very delicate and tactful. They have never demanded for help. So, but they express really such a joyful gratitude when they receive it. So, and I also want to underline this: we are speaking about people so with very low income, with small pensions. So our mini grants are really very valuable for them. Next slide, please. So another our famous project is the telehealth project. So it spans let's say 14 cities, communities of Ukraine. So our Berdyansk is on occupied territory, is not participating in telehealth projects. So, but we still consider Melitopol and Mariupol communities as our wards, as our clients, because people who were evacuated from Melitopol and Mariupol, so they are internally displaced and they might live in other communities all over the Ukraine, but still we consider them as being members of Melitopol and Mariupol communities. From January 1, 2024 till today. So we've provided consultations for 172 elders, I mean online consultations. So 20 elders got their blood tests and other tests in an offline mode. I mean, these are people who live in the neighboring to Dnipro communities, and they had an opportunity to go to GMC, I mean, like to see doctors in person. Yeah, so, and they had an opportunity to undergo medical examinations, to have this ultrasound diagnostics and all kinds of other diagnoses. And they were also able to see doctors who do not provide online consultations, like, for instance, dermatologist or urologist or gynecologist or this vascular surgeon, etc. So these are doctors who need to see a person, so like next, and then they give give them prescribe a treatment to them. So and then these elders continue communication with this doctor in the online mode. So and this helps our elders really a lot. I want to say that telehealth project, besides the fact that really highly qualified doctors are engaged in this project, so besides this fact, I want to say that thanks to this project, people who were undergoing some screening, so they identified diseases that needed some urgent intervention, and which means that if they didn't participate in telehealth projects, so they could have faced a much harder and much more difficult situation. For instance, in Novomoskovsk, we had an Olga Dugina, a woman, so who had some eye issues, eye problems, so her eyesight was decreasing. She lives alone, so her husband died, her son lives abroad, and thanks to our telehealth project, she was diagnosed some eye problems, ophthalmological projects, and she got like a complete medical examination, and she was operated. So she had eye surgery. Now she's so thankful to us and very happy. So that for that opportunity to save her vision, to save her not vision, eyesight. Also 2 weeks ago, so there was an urgent operation for our elder who lives in Kamenskaya. His last name is let me see, Stolyarov, Boris Stolyarov. He actually turned to the clinic because he had some issues with one organ, and then it turned out during the consultation that there is some accompanying like kind of illness, so the surgery, two operations were done, and they're very successful, and one of them was made for the first time by the doctor of JMC clinic, so for the first time in Ukraine. And literally that man, we saved his life because if we didn't do that, so he would have died, or at least he would have suffered a lot. So I want to say that in Ukraine, people do not often. This is a little bit different, so do not often want to consult a therapist, but now we see that a lot of people are changing their attitude towards this, psychological support, towards therapy. And we are really happy that we have an opportunity to help people with this. Next slide, please. And what I want to say that this is about our mental health project. It is a pilot project that we initiated this year. We invited Pavlograd community members in September, and in October we invited Novomoskovsk community members to visit Dnipro. So we wanted to support them psychologically, I would say, emotionally. And to kind of like immerse them into Jewish tradition, because they live in these small communities, small villages, so that they have no Jewish life. And when they got absorbed in this beautiful, like Jewish atmosphere, so we took them to a synagogue, to Sofer Center, which is actually a unique Sofer Center. So where Torahs are restored, it is the biggest in Europe. And Torah scrolls that have been damaged beginning with Second World War times. So people for the first time saw a man wearing tefillin, and it was so moving for them. And we also took them on a guided tour around Menorah Center, and we took them to the Museum of History of Jews in Ukraine and Holocaust victims, about Holocaust victims. So the most important that we provided our clients with trainings given by a therapist. It was both art therapy and some, I don't know, like therapeutic meetings, and we helped people feel themselves differently. Yeah, so change, get inspired, even to get acquainted with each other, to communicate in person. Yeah, and for them it was kind of a breath of fresh air. So, and people really were happy. And I want to say that Novomoskovsk elders were taken to Dnipro on Sukkot. And so we brought them to Sukkah, and we invited the rabbi, who was telling about the history of the holiday and about the traditions. And for people, it was something new, unforgettable impression, experience, and it helped them gain their resources back, which is almost impossible in where they live. Yeah, and we were happy that the feedback of that project was amazing. Now it's winter and it's slippery and it's kind of difficult to bring people from even the neighboring communities. Because people are brought to Dnipro by bus, so we are planning to continue. So we suspend this project, but we are planning to continue it in spring. So, and there are and those for you to understand. So those people who already have participated in this project, they want to come again. So, but we are planning to invite new communities. Also, I hope that we will continue implementing this project, and I also think that we will do some online series or maybe online sessions on mental health, on art therapy projects. So for those who can't come to us in person, to be able to participate and to somehow like support their mental health. Next slide, please. Okay, our operational activities, like, I mean, regular, mundane, everyday businesses. For these projects to be effective, yeah, so, and to be implemented in the most effective way. So we need a really close collaboration within our team. That's why every Tuesday, so Debbie and I meet to discuss all our current activities. We outline plans, we summarize, finalize things. So we think what can be improved or modified. So for our outcomes to be the most effective, yeah, so the best possible. So, and for us to be able to reach each of our clients in the best possible way. And these meetings, they really help us coordinate and structure our activities in the best possible way and to advance really fast, especially when we need it, when we need fast responses. And on a regular basis, besides such meetings between me and Debbie, so we also engage our coordinators here into such meetings. So, and we discuss their challenges, we discuss their needs, and like this is really very important for our coordinators, and not only for them, but for us as well. So, and it helps us organize our work effectively. Action for Ukraine project has been operating for 2 years already. We are expanding our activities, and our work is done. All our work is done within the legislation of current legislation of Ukraine, which is constantly changing. New amendments are being introduced, new laws are passed, and we made a decision that we need a better accountant than the one we started our activities with, and from November 1, we admitted a new So we employed a new accountant who used to work in international Jewish organizations. She also worked in JDC, and she knows all these nuances of Ukrainian NGOs and how to process documents, how to do all this. She's a great, a skilled accountant, and hopefully with her expertise, so like, I would rather say her expertise will help us avoid some maybe misunderstandings and problems with Ukrainian legislation and institutions. Next slide, sorry. Please. Education and training is also an important part of our work. So, and I'm really grateful and happy to have an opportunity to participate in strategies of change training. It was an important training for me to understand how to grow, how to move forward, how to understand this stage of growth of our organization, the strategy, the overall strategy. It was really especially important to evaluate the operation of the organization. So I want to thank everyone, and those who organized that event and those who participated. So in it was great, interesting, useful for me personally at least, and I think for the organization Action for Ukraine as well, to move forward really with wide open eyes. My many thanks to the board and to everyone present here. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, I am ready to answer them.
Are there any questions? Guess it looks like there aren't. So maybe Debbie, now if you would give us an update on what's going on here.
Great, thank you. So first of all, I want to start by thanking Ella and Galina, who also meets with us on Tuesday mornings as our translator. I really, Ella said all of these things very casually and confidently about what is being done in Ukraine, and I cannot emphasize enough the steadfast commitment and that an energy that Ella has put into to get all of these things accomplished. It is far from easy to get things done in Ukraine, and Ella has been just steadfast and focused on making sure that these things happen at a high level, and her commitment to our clients and to our work is just I just can't say enough good things about it. And I want to remind everybody, I know I probably don't need to say this, but I want to remind everybody that Ella and Galina are also doing this in the background of war as well. And there have been many times that I have met with Ella and Galina while they have been sitting in the dark and in the cold. And they have two different kinds of internet service and wireless service to make sure that they can log on when they need to log on to get around the issues of blackouts. And there have been times where they've had to look at the phone because they've had alerts coming in about missiles coming to their communities while we've been on our Zooms together, and they've managed to do this work while they are facing the same things that our elders are facing with the war going on in the background, and I just really cannot thank their partnership enough for their care and making sure that all of this gets done. And I mean, you could see that even today with Galina frantically trying to get onto our Zoom. And I'm sure that if you heard the news this morning, Dnipro, and there was a lot of missile attacks happening in this morning, last night in Ukraine as well. So this is not easy. This is not easy. We have had our packages stuck at customs, and Ella has had to coordinate around customs. We have had the bank questioning our money transfers. You know, nothing happens in a straight line when it comes to doing business in Ukraine. And Ella has had to maneuver around every last bit of it, and she has been just incredibly amazing. So I do want to start my update with that. And then I want to thank also, so thank you, Ella, and thank you, Galina. And then I want to thank everybody who is on the board and made time to be here today as supporters of action. The board has been unbelievable as we have moved the organization forward in all different ways, and has been incredibly supportive. As you'll hear a little bit about this theory of change and things that we're looking at to make sure that the organization stays contemporary and current and able to do the things that it needs to do here in the US, so that we are modern and transparent in the work that we're doing. And I really cannot thank the board for all of the hours of meetings that they have done to make sure that that happens. And finally, all of the supporters, you know, many of you on this call today have packed boxes, have reached out to your friends, have donated very generously to the work that we're doing. And we could not do the telehealth project. We can't do the mental health project. We can't send the micro grants. We can't send, you know, Ella didn't even talk about the humanitarian aid that we send. I'll talk about that in a minute. We can't do all of that without all of you. So I want to start with a great big thank you for all of that. And then I'm going to try to power through my update fairly quickly so that we can spend the most amount of time with Gavin and on the theory of change, because that is really going to be where our focus is on the future. And I feel like my summary is more of a summary of what we have done this past year. And I think that's important, and the impact that we have had in this past year is important. But I also want to focus us also on the future. So we have spent a lot of time this past year in board development, both with the board here in Action for Post-Soviet Jewry here in the States, and with the organization in Ukraine. The board here in the States did a self-evaluation to look at the kinds of skills that we have with board members here and what we still need. Sergey, who took over as treasurer this year, did an amazing job with looking at our budget and trying to align our budget here with our budget in Ukraine. They're two very different systems, and our budget years are very different, and really trying to look at how we can align the two budgets so that we have a better reporting of how our money is being spent, and making sure that the budgets are aligned in that way. The theory of change, which we're going to look at in a little bit, really provides us with a contemporary language of where the organization is today and where it's going, and our focus and our focus in our mission. which has been incredibly helpful to me as I talk about the organization and how we've pivoted to do the work that we're doing now. In one of the reporting organizations for nonprofits called Candid, we have achieved platinum status, which is the highest status of reporting, which shows really great transparency on our organization. You can see our little platinum transparency badge, and we have that on our website. So if donors look up our organization as a potential place to donate, it shows that we have this level of transparency in our work. Yeah. Thank you, Shauna. And then in the past year, we've moved our database, our donor base, to a completely different platform. And we have been spending the year cleaning up our data. It's not an easy task, but we have been working on that. And hopefully we will continue to work on that and get mailing addresses right and spelling of names right and thank you letters out in a more timely manner. And so we again thank our donors, for our supporters, for your patience with all of that, but hopefully we're getting to a even more efficient system with all of that. Next slide. We are still feeling the impact of October 7th. Our donations are still down. I am on many groups with colleagues who are non-Israel centric organizations, and they are all feeling this as well. You know, in the Jewish world, all eyes are on Israel and all eyes are on anti-Semitism. And unfortunately, the war in Ukraine has taken a real backseat. And if there was one thing I could ask everybody on this call for help with, it is fundraising. We desperately need help with fundraising this year. We did have an amazing Israel mission in April that was coined One Heart, Two Wars, thanks to one of the women on the call had this brilliant idea about this One Heart, Two Wars. Ella met us there, and it was the first time that I have seen Ella since we hired her, actually. And it was a very impactful and an emotional time. We were able to meet with people who, we spent a lot of time meeting with people in Israel who came from Ukraine to Israel and are also impacted by the two wars. There is now and is continuing to be an increased aggression from Russia. Not well reported in the news here, but definitely, but definitely being felt throughout Ukraine. I just got back from a trip from Europe, and there is a definite a lot of conversation in Europe about the increase of aggression from Russia to Ukraine and what it might mean to bordering countries, and a lot of worry about that, and something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. We try to keep people updated here through our social media. I think once a week we have on our social media outlets some sort of news update about what is happening, to keep that sort of fresh and the news updated. We did have to pause our aid to to people who are still living in the occupied areas in Ukraine. As Ella said, people who are displaced from those occupied areas through Ukraine proper, we are still supporting. But because of the way the laws are being interpreted, it is difficult, and we had to make a very difficult decision to pause sending aid into occupied areas right now. And I'm happy to talk to people separately after this meeting about how we made that decision and why we made that decision. Next slide. And our additional focus areas this year are our 50th anniversary, which is coming up in April, and we would love help with that event. We'll talk a little bit more about this at the end of the meeting. We were hoping to do something with Next Generation to get the next generation more involved with our work. There seems to be an eagerness with the next generation to want to connect and learn about the history of our organization and how they can help in the present. So we are working with some of our board members and some community organizations about how we can potentially do something about that this year. And most importantly is a real focus on the financial security of the organization, and how we can make the organization really financially secure so that we are able to pivot and do the work that we need to do regardless of what happens in the world, and regardless of what happens with the war. There are going to be people in need that we can help, and we are a small but mighty organization that in our 50 years of service in this area, we are able to pivot, we are able to quickly move to meet whatever emerging needs are there. And we need to be able to have the financial security and the financial resources to be able to do that as the world changes over the next year or two. We often say, even before I started with the organization, the sort of Jewish text about if you change one life, you change the world. And I would take that one step further to say that sometimes just changing one person is enough. When you think about the stories that Ella shared about the telehealth project and how radically we changed those people's experiences in their life and in their worlds, that is miraculous, and that takes finances, that takes generosity of dollars, and we are going to need a lot of that over the next year or two. So so thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce Asia, who is one of our newer board members. We elected her in last year, and she was one of our board members that participated in our theory of change. Hi. And,
hello.
And Asia is going to just share a little bit about that process and introduce Gavin.
Sure. Thank you so much, Debbie. So to give folks an introduction of the theory of change process, really what it was a 12-week process where the end goal of it was to come out with a well-identified statement of the problem that we solve and a well-defined mission statement, and then some KPIs, because of course our organization has been around for quite a few decades, and our mission, especially with the situation in Ukraine, has changed and evolved. And so in order for us to address appropriately address the needs today in the post-Soviet Jewish community, and then in the future, we needed to come up with a newer kind of problem statement and newer mission statement that would help kind of bring this org into the future. And so we worked with a few members of the board and then Gavin, who's on this call as well, to come up with really what are the core problems that we solve? How do we measure that? What are the things that we do as an organization? What are the things that we don't? So without much further ado, I'll introduce Gavin and he can share a little bit more about the outcomes of the theory of change and what we came up with. And also sorry, Gavin, one more note. Thank you to everyone for your input through the theory of change process. We know both for the board members who were involved and dedicated their time throughout the 12 weeks, but then also for your feedback. It's really helped us come up with something that I think we can all be proud of. So, Gavin, passing it over to you now.
Excellent. Can I be heard?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So I know, there's a lot to cover in this meeting, so I will keep my introduction very short. But for those that I haven't met yet, my name is Gavin Grant. I'm the founder and principal consultant at Sequoia. We do a lot of theory of change work, strategic plans, board trainings, you name it, earned income strategies. We do a lot of that for smaller organizations because a lot of organizations could use the help, could use the guidance, but sometimes can't afford a big consulting firm to come in. So we try to provide a lot of affordable support for organizations. And I will say that I had such a great pleasure of working with the team here at Action PSJ. You guys were so much fun to work with. I became an expert at Zoom translations and interpretations. So that was so much fun. And I'll just say, Debbie, Asia, Ben, Ella, it's so good to see you. Galena, it's so good to see you. I didn't see Zale in the room. And for the other board members who I've met before, it's really good to see you as well. So I'll walk you through the theory of change, but first I want to start with a little bit of a quick overview to kind of anchor us again. Some of you may have heard a little bit of this, but this was a number of months ago. So I want to make this relatively quick and hopefully simple so you can see what work we've done to produce your theory of change. So a theory of change is really, think of it as your organization's strategic foundation. Now, on the page, we say it can serve as your strategic foundation if you let it. And I want to emphasize that because, sometimes organizations will produce strategic plans and theories of change and all of these other things, and then they don't even look at it again. So I highly encourage you to continuously, go back to this document after you've read it, after you've thought through it, ask any questions you have to, Debbie, folks on the team, even me, shoot me an email. I'm happy to respond. But make sure you understand it and come back to it because it can really help with these other, parts of the pyramid or parts of the triangle on the screen that you'll see. And I'll cover that really briefly in a second. So a theory of change, to Asia's point, really the goal is to clarify what you care about. So there's really 7 key questions, right? So what are the issues that we care about? What specifically will we focus on? Because chances are you care about a lot of things, but organizations can't do everything. So what specifically will we focus on? What group or groups of people will we focus on helping? The scale. So when you look at it, when you look at the group of people that you look at, you say, how many of those people are out there? How many need help? And what specifically, how many of those people should we help who are out there? And then it's, what are we ultimately trying to accomplish, right? For those people, what do we really want to accomplish? If we are successful, what do we say about ourselves? And then you really get into the how, how do we create the change? And then what's the proof of the change? What's the evidence of the change? So you'll see, if you read the theory of change document, you'll see a lot of language focus on outcomes. What are the outcomes that provide evidence along the way of the change? So why is this important? So a theory of change is important because it defines parameters for your organization. It can feel really scary to put your organization in a well-defined box, but actually that's really important for you to do, because if you don't put yourself in a box to number one on this page, your mission could drift into areas that, you didn't really agree upon. So you want to prevent that. You want to really define your parameters. Two, it helps you set strategic direction. So you'll see in, a couple of slides that this should feed into your strategic plans or your strategic planning, to the point where you could say, in your strategic plan, hey, there's an area of the theory of change that isn't quite working. Maybe our strategic plan over the next few years is to address that part of the theory of change to make it stronger. Number three, to optimize resources. So if you have clear parameters, you can really focus your time, energy, resources on the things that will actually move the needle, actually improve your chances of producing change. It ensures accountability. If this board agrees on the theory of change, you can say, hey, Debbie, hey, Ella, hey, team, we're holding you accountable to these outcomes. What are you doing to drive these outcomes? But really, it's about number 5 and 6. So, if you have parameters, it helps you create better and clear messaging to folks to say, hey, this is what we do. These are our parameters. We don't go outside of these parameters, right? You are shutting off different possibilities, and people can say, oh, okay, I got it. You are focused purely on this and not on this. I understand. And I really love that. And therefore, I want to support you, because you're demonstrating commitment to number 6, that these are the things that you're doing. So a theory of change isn't about your organization. And that's what's really cool about the theory of change, because the theory of change is purely focused on the outcomes for the issue, the societal problem that you care about, and the group of people you serve. All of the other parts of the triangle, the number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5, are about your organization. And what are those parts of the triangle? So after a theory of change, you got logic models for your programs. Think about, what is the specific program design? How many people do you need? What resources? That's what a logic model is. And you base your logic model off of a theory of change. Some organizations have it, some don't. That's okay. Again, strategic planning is when, that's about your organization. Like, what are our strategic initiatives? How much money do you spend over the next few years? What big technology investments? Who do you hire? Your annual plans come, potentially from your theory of change, and that's purely about you and how much money you want to raise, and, what are you going to do this year? And then short-term outputs are about your organization. So the theory of change is purely focused on what is the change that we want to create and how, but it doesn't really focus on, the specifics of resource allocation for your organization. It just paints the picture of what are you trying to accomplish for the world. So I won't really cover this because I just kind of talked about it, but the parts that are highlighted on the bottom right are how these things fit in, right? So if you have a theory of change, and it says, hey, this is what has to happen to produce change, the logic models help put the theory of change into action. It says, for example, hey, we want to work with partners to deliver aid. Okay, which partner? That's a logic model. Which telehealth organization? That's the logic model, right? Strategic plan. We want to, partner with other telehealth organizations over the next 3 years. And you begin to plan for that over the next few years. So that's how a theory of change fits in. So you might have seen this before, but it really defines, if you're thinking about a map, it defines where are your target beneficiaries today, the group of people that you care about. Where are they today? What's their current challenge? What's their current pain? And what's the future change? What's the destination for them? What will change for them as a direct result of your theory? And your theory, you want to think of it as what is the path to the destination? The theory to get to the change. Okay. So with that being said, I'll jump into your theory of change. Be sure to read it. There's a lot of language in there. Debbie's made some really great updates. I got a chance to see that, so that's incredible. Debbie, and again, Debbie and the team were really instrumental in helping this come to life. But let's talk about the answers to these 7 questions, right? One by one. Okay. So we just covered this a few slides ago, but we'll cover this for your theory of change. So question 1, what are the problems? What are the issues that you care about addressing? So in our workshops for the theory of change, we uncovered 2 problems. The first problem is that, there are many Jews in the US who are really unfamiliar with the Soviet Jewry movement. Your organization is called Action for Post-Soviet Jewry, and a lot of people don't really know about the history. A lot of folks may be unaware of the current challenges facing Jews in the FSU. And there's a lack of engagement to the degree that this organization feels Jews should be engaged with folks in Ukraine to support them. And then there's this other problem that the organization's done really, really well at, which is providing vulnerable Jews in Ukraine with the things that they need. And that's nutritious food, livable homes, personal supplies, basic medications, and standard healthcare. Jews in Ukraine need that, especially as a result of the war with Russia. And what's important on this page is that when we list problem 2, that is really the core of what Action PSJ is. Action PSJ has always been largely a humanitarian aid organization. So we want to emphasize that that's the core, but in our workshops, we uncovered an additional problem, and that's problem 1. So question 2, what is the scope? Which issues will Action PSJ focus on addressing? So in terms of the US Jewish engagement, problem number 1, right? The scope for Action PSJ we found are really like these light US efforts, these reasonable efforts to promote education, right, about the issues affecting Jews in Ukraine. Education for context about the movement of Soviet Jewry so that that isn't lost in history. Awareness about the current issues, promoting greater Jewish solidarity. Because, in our workshops, I remember there was some talk about how there is a lot of emphasis on, Jews in Ukraine. I mean, Jews in Israel, for example. But a lot of folks are not really thinking about the Jews in Ukraine. So greater Jewish solidarity around that. But then opportunities, promoting opportunities for action to help Jews in Ukraine, which Action PSJ is the vehicle for that. But in terms of the other issue for humanitarian aid in Ukraine, one of the things that we really determined in our workshops is that what's most important to Action PSJ is that there is aid that meets the most basic needs of Jews in Ukraine. You're not trying to do everything, but this organization believes that every human being should have their basic needs met. So when we defined the scope, this was really, really important, just to make sure that we were really clear that we were meeting basic needs. And some things kind of fell off the list a little bit. Some things are secondary, but the basic needs are extremely important. All right. Question 3. Who will Action PSJ serve? So for the light efforts in the United States, what was really interesting that came out of our workshops is that there was this greater focus on adults, Jewish adults in the United States. Why? Because they have money. They're more likely to donate and advocate. They're more likely to lead initiatives. They're, interested in building a stronger connection to their culture. And they can engage their family and communities around the importance of Jewish culture, the importance of Jewish solidarity. and the importance of making sure that folks support Jews in Ukraine. And that's important for intergenerational, just the passing down of these values of solidarity and support for the most vulnerable, which actually brings me to your target number 2. So for the aid that tries to help meet the basic needs of Jews in Ukraine, the target is the most vulnerable. So this was interesting. So, this organization really has focused for a long time on the elderly, on the pensioners, on the disabled. We talked a lot about, their loneliness and the support that they need when we went through the workshops. But what was really interesting is that we found that there are other vulnerable groups, especially now, given the war, that this organization might be able to really focus on helping and just call it out, on the website and even more, that we want to support women and children. We want to support financially struggling families. And I believe it was Sergey who mentioned in our previous board meeting that when we talked about this, that there are folks who are financial or who are politically persecuted and displaced that we should also focus on. So that suggestion was really welcomed, and so we added that to these 5 groups of who you serve. And you're going to see like these little clips, these little images of the theory of change presentation on the side. That's all that is, but we wanted to just make it small so that you didn't really focus on that. All right, question 4, our scale. So how many people are out there, and how many people need our help, and how many people of that population should we serve? So among, the Jews in the United States, we didn't quite determine a number. We didn't quite go there because, again, that's not really the core of what Action PSJ does, but it's a meaningful piece. But we just didn't get there. But one of the things we did determine is that there's likely a primary focus on Boston. Why? Because, Boston is where Action PSJ's headquarters are. Right. But we also did talk about, these other uh, Jewish circles as well. So, APSJ's personal circles of influence, areas where there may be concentrations of post-Soviet Jewish descent. We have this spreadsheet where we actually, I think, recommended some places like New York, Philadelphia, California, other places like that. But what was interesting, and in prep for this presentation, we did look and we saw that footnote at the bottom where there are a lot of Jewish adults in Boston. So even if this organization were to focus there and purely there for now, just to kind of test out some things and try to mobilize engagement, you've got more than enough adults in Boston to start there. But for the most vulnerable Jews in Ukraine, we did more of an estimation around, who Action PSJ should focus on. So when we determined that we wanted to focus on the most vulnerable, what came out of this was an estimation of, okay, we have to look at how many Ukrainian Jews there are. And we went back and forth with some numbers, but there's around 200,000 plus Jews in Ukraine. And within that 200,000, there are folks who are vulnerable, but there are also folks who are already accessing humanitarian aid from other sources, right? There is a gap, and we estimated that gap is potentially around 7.5%. And what is that in, the number of people? That's around 15,000. So that was important to just give this organization context on, okay, we got some work to do to try to serve or meet the great need that's out there. As the organization tries to expand the number of communities it serves, as the organization tries to understand who are those people in the communities, there's probably around 15,000 that we might want to serve over the long term. So far we covered that there are 2 challenges. There are Jewish adults in the US. There's 15,000 Jews in Ukraine. But when we get to question 5, the change that this organization wants to create, the way you want to think about the change is we are successful if our goals are met, if our mission is met, if. And on the side of the US Jews, it's our mission is met. We're successful if US Jews are engaged with Jewish heritage and Action PSJ's efforts for Ukrainian Jews. And we're successful if those vulnerable Jews in Ukraine have aid that meets their most acute needs and allows them to maintain a basic standard of living. So these are the outcome statements that if, we work with organizations who have like 5 minutes to give a presentation sometimes for some funders. This is what you want to focus on. These outcome statements. They're short, they're concise, and you can speak to them, and they're really clear. But let's go into, the how, because we've got the challenge, we've got the destination that we just talked about. The theory is the how. And the theory is also the evidence, the proof. So, when we get into your how, what's really cool, what emerged is that there are 3 parts to creating the change. So for folks who have already read the theory of change document, kind of dug in, seen it before, you'll recognize this, but there are 3 parts to creating the change. And these 3 parts, if we're going from the left side of the page to the right side of the page, the first part is based on awareness, and that's a US-based piece of the organization's focus. That directly speaks to that problem number 1 based on, Jews in the US who need to be engaged about Soviet Jewish heritage, the challenges of Jews in Ukraine, to inspire solidarity and engagement. Action PSJ can fill a gap there. And that's important because, that can drive number 2 and number 3 in really incredible ways. With more engagement and more solidarity among Jews in the United States, that boosts, your ability to identify the most pressing needs. It boosts your ability to deliver, which are number 2 and 3 on the page. So number 2 is about identifying the needs on the ground. That's where Ella and team really come in and really do some incredible work. That identification is so important. And one of the things that I found fascinating about Action PSJ is just the degree to which you guys really care about the on-the-ground assessment for folks and identifying the people with the most pressing needs. That is incredibly inspiring. And then number 3 is all about the delivery of the aid. So, of course, the volunteers in the community and staff provide the aid, but hopefully we're doing that in a swift and efficient manner. And there's a few different buckets of aid that we talked about, direct aid, cash aid, aid through partner organizations. But there's also direct aid that US Jews can provide through, for example, these online platforms to send aid directly to the folks that are in need. And all of those things lead to the change that's on the right side, and there's just a quick summary of some of the things that we talked about, but cultural preservation is important. Responsive and effective aid for vulnerable Jews in Ukraine is important. The idea that Jews in Ukraine can live with dignity and security despite circumstances like the war in Russia, for example, and the increasing renewal of Jewish life in Ukraine, which is, if I'm remembering correctly, a part of your mission statement, right? So let's talk about the specifics in each part of the theory, just really quickly, and then we'll go to questions. But part 1, and I'm not going to read all of this, but part 1 is the awareness piece. But when we get to question 6, it's the how, like what will we do? There were a few different things that this group thought about doing. There is this gap of, awareness about some of the Soviet Jewish history. So their ideas of potentially, some educational events in an online community. You know, connecting with Jewish communities locally, providing opportunity for Jews to connect a little bit more for the solidarity locally. But then there's the humanitarian aid efforts, providing them with newsletters so that they're aware of the needs, providing them with giving opportunities, one time and recurring, and also providing opportunities to support initiatives, whether it be volunteering in the US or anything like that. Under question 7, the proof, we actually have a list of outcomes and how you can measure them in the theory of change document. And that's all I want to reference there, because you can read that. You can ask me questions about it after, but there's a lot in there, so I don't want to go through it one by one. For part 2 of the theory, the identification, so now we're moving into Ukraine again. If you look at question number 6, like what will we do? It's really about identifying accessible communities, because right now, Action PSJ can't access everything just yet. Providing on-the-ground assessment, maintaining an updated needs list so that you can be nimble and able to support these organizations quickly and in a responsive way. So we outlined a number of things there, 6 things that the organization should consider doing, or things that the organization already does. And again, the outcomes are on the right side of the page, right? We need to make sure that these outcomes are being hit in order for the organization to believe or know that it's successful. And then finally, part 3 of the theory actually has 3 different parts. So you'll see a 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. But really, the delivery of the direct aid of essential aid comes down to direct aid, which is mechanism number 1, micro grants, which is cash to individuals, and access to partners, right? So we know what the direct aid is, but the specifics are, nutritional food packages, heating, lighting, and electricity devices, over-the-counter medicine and vitamins, but the most critical ones, not everything, personal hygiene supplies, and also some other critical living supplies. The micro grants to Ella's presentation can help pay for emergencies and repairs, bills, consistency in getting their needs met, continuous education supplies, medication supplies, and then money to enable them to make purchases by themselves. So they're not fully reliant on a box of donations. They can have the dignity of making purchases themselves. And then finally, access to your partners. So right now, I know that you have a telehealth partner, and I heard that in the update. But what also came out of a board meeting, and I don't remember who exactly said it, but there could be other partners that emerge, like pharmacies, for example, to provide some of the over-the-counter medicine and vitamins. But there are also other organizations that you partner with. So to wrap up, your theory of change essentially looks like this, right? So we have identified the problem, the challenge. We've identified the change, and we identified the theory in between of how you get there. And the other last thing that we did was, beyond the specifics of what this organization will do to produce change, there is a bigger vision of change as well that's really exciting. And that's listed on this page and also listed in the theory of change document that you have. So we really tried to outline the broader language that if you're telling the story of your organization, if you're talking about the dream of a world you want to contribute to, you have that language as well. And you can put that in your marketing, etc. And I'll actually close with that. So it's like, what do we do with this thing? You can turn the vision into action by evaluating your current services. So does what we do clearly align to what we determined is our theory of change? Is it scalable enough to reach more and more of the folks that we need to reach? Develop the metrics. So we know what we need to track, but maybe we need surveys and we need good tracking to make sure that we have updated data. You can update your communications. So, over time, you can update, your website, how you share your impact, your annual report, how you tell your story. And then finally, you can build or update your strategic plan or your annual plans to reflect what areas of the theory of change do you want to develop? Doesn't all have to be developed at once, but which parts do we want to develop? Which parts do we want to strengthen? Which parts are going really well and we want to invest in that more? So I've covered a lot. I think I'm within my time, hopefully. But I'm willing to take any questions and feel free to jump in, Debbie, Asia, Ben, if there's anything I missed.
Thank you, Gavin. That was an amazing presentation of the 12 weeks of intense conversation and discussion that we went through to get to this. And your leadership was amazing during all of that. And yes, I would like to open it up to questions. People could either put questions in the chat, or we could again see the screen and see if people just want to kind of like raise their hand or shake or I can't see anybody right now, so I can't see if people have a question to see. There we go.
Everybody has the opportunity to unmute themselves if they want to ask
Yeah.
a question live too.
Perfect. So
I
Greta,
see that Greta raised their hand.
Yeah.
And thanks, Sergey.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is a very, very interesting and comprehensive analysis. I'm really impressed with it. Just to get started with number one, curious about the process from here. Is the board going to be engaged in figuring out the how-tos, or are you going to create a committee? I was curious, especially about number one, raising awareness among U.S. Jews, how that is going to be approached.
So
Debbie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah,
I know
that
that
is
that was one area you were really excited about.
exactly. That's a great question, Greta. So before I answer that, I'm curious why that question came from, where that question came from, like what the interest is in that question.
Well, my graduate work was evaluations. I evaluated rural community development projects in Honduras, and we had what was called a logical framework. So not that I really worked in that after my year, unfortunately, but I guess I have that kind of a mind. I'm curious about how you're going to move forward. And also, I guess it's a result of having, been with the Dnipropetrovsky Hilla project for all these years and looking at strategic plans and sitting in on lots of committee meetings, Deborah, as you know.
Right. So I will say one of the reasons why I was excited to start with this process is that it's very hands-on, as opposed to a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan or a 10-year strategic plan. First of all, those take a long time to do. They're very costly, and sometimes by the time you're finished with them, they're not always so they're not always, but by the time you finish doing the plan, things have already changed quickly in the world. And what I loved about this process is that it was 12 weeks and we had something that was very viable for the moment. And the immediate next steps, I will say, is that this is still considered in draft form for the board. The board hasn't actually voted this in yet, so that the next step is at our next board meeting. There will be a board discussion, and the board will need to vote this in. And then if, assuming that that happens at our January strategic planning time, there is a section of this plan that hasn't been filled out, that has to do with sort of identifying goals, really. And so that would be the time that the board would identify the very specific goals of this plan. And then I'm hopeful that it would become a tool for us to look at for all of the things that Gavin just said. It would be sort of our compass to, oftentimes Ella and I get calls from a community that they need help, or somebody wants us to do X or Y or Z. And this can sort of be a compass for us to look back at and say, does it fit with our theory of change? Does it work? There may be times that we say it doesn't fit, but we still think it's important because of something that's happening in the world. And we might still go to the board, either or board, and say, it doesn't fit with our theory of change, but this is really important because of the situation right now, and we still want to do it. But it gives us that sort of framework and mindfulness and focus to be able to make very clear and transparent decisions. And for me, I have to say, I've been thinking a lot about this. I just had my 6th anniversary with Action, 5 of which I've been the executive director. And as a reminder, I started, 2 weeks before COVID shut down the world. So most of my time has been in a very reactive mode with the organization. And I feel like this provides some sort of framework to move in a more proactive, in a more proactive way with some structure. I don't know if that completely answered your question, Greta, but that is sort of where I think I'm thinking. The executive committee has and Gavin, while I appreciate your compliments about updating the plan, really that came from the executive committee and others sort of looking it over and making some suggestions. So we're still in that process of input into the wording of the plan and moving the plan forward.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions, thoughts?
Debbie, I did just have one other thing that popped into my head. And I think when, God willing, sooner than later, when the war should be over, I think that obviously this is a longer discussion for another time, to engage local Jewish communities, synagogues perhaps, in celebrating, if you can call it that, the end of the war, and using the momentum of that change, that transition to a more peaceful environment, to arousing interest and action in order to prop up support for the residents and those who may return. I think that will really provide a springboard. It just came to me that we could harness that period in time to to stimulate talk and activity to garner support for the communities to rebuild them.
I think that's a beautiful and a great idea, and I think that we're in a more strategic place to be able to respond to that, knowing that will happen at some point, and putting in place the structure and the staff to do that. So thank you. I think that's a really sage idea and thought.
And what's
Carol,
great about that idea, just really quickly, is that that really fits into what's on the page. You
right.
know, when we went through the exercise, it took us some time to really think about, should Action PSJ be doing things like that? And it really just emerged that, yeah, the group should, because Action can play a role in celebrating and educating and all of the things that you even mentioned. And it's just really beautiful to see how that aligns really neatly with connecting with Jewish communities, locally and globally, on this page. So I'm excited that that suggestion was raised, because it really fits into this piece that may not have made it if we hadn't had, some of these really deep discussions about what Action PSJ should do.
Thank you, Gavin. Carol?
I put into the chat that I thought this was absolutely terrific, but I want to just expand on that a little. I've done a fair amount of strategic planning over the years in my life, and I find that this is it's very crisp, because the structure of it forces you through a series of discussions and decisions that then guide you to the next thing. So it's very focused. There are so many things that we could talk about Action and its history and what it does and what's special about it, and it doesn't let you get bogged down in that in a way. It really just keeps you going through the exercise in a very directed and, I can only say structured way, so that it takes you to almost an inevitable conclusion, because it crunches all of the information so well. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so. We found this work to be so important because it just provides a lot of clarity, and it gets out of the noise and out of the specifics of planning, just so you can take a step back and really get on the same page about some things. So I really hope that the exercise in this summary, and even the more detailed summary, really helps. It should make strategic planning a lot easier, since you have some guardrails and some things that you might be looking at this plan and say, to the previous question, hey, we don't do a lot of the awareness activities today. Maybe that should be in our next strategic plan to focus on building one of those things, or testing some things out, or maybe even producing, like, a celebration for when the war ends, God willing. So it should make it a little bit easier for all of you. Any more questions? I see a lot of faces that I haven't met before, so I'm curious if some of you who may have just, met me for the first time or heard this for the first time, if there are any questions or things that I wasn't clear about. I get it. It's a lot to digest.
I will share that I was away recently, and I was with people who were not necessarily Jewish and had no connection to Action or the Boston Jewish community at all. And inevitably people would ask, what do you do for a living? And I'd have to, share a little bit about what I do for a living. And I found myself leaning into the wording from this theory of change quite often, and talking about, sort of where we are and where we're going. And it was just very helpful to talk about what we're doing now and the work we're focused on, who we're focused on, the partners that we have, the change we're trying to create in the world. It was actually the first time I sort of tested this out in public, and I found it very helpful.
That's incredible. Anything else? By the way, if you're typing in the chat, make sure you select to everyone, because you might just be responding to Shauna, who's producing the Zoom, or responding to a direct person.
I don't have any questions in my chat box, just so you know.
Awesome.
Great. All right. If there's no other questions for Gavin, I will thank Gavin for his work and his time with us, and really for all of his work and time with us, because it has been incredibly valuable and helpful to the conversation behind the scenes, the conversation with Gavin, the conversation in our small groups and our large groups. It really has pushed us to think differently and think forward for the organization, and I'm just very grateful. So thank you, Gavin.
Thank you, guys. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you. And I just wanted to, we have a couple minutes. I wanted to again ask if anybody had any questions specifically for Ella or for myself. I know we threw a lot of information at all of you. The two things that I forgot to mention in my report that I wanted to share was that we did this year do an evaluation with all of our clients in Ukraine. Another project that Ella undertook with the coordinators. It was a brief one, but it had to be done by pencil and paper because we don't have a lot of computers or technology available for either our clients or our coordinators. And I'm happy to report that on the numeric ratings, everybody seems fairly satisfied with what we have sent. We're in the process of translating the narrative pieces of it, and so hopefully we'll have more information about that. But this is really the first time in 6 or 7 years that we've been able to do sort of a thorough evaluation of the support that we're sending, and that's amazing. We just sent we got a donation through an organization that I'm connected with for what's called Facebook portals, which are basically these I don't know what you call them, but they're almost like a tablet where you can run Facebook and Zoom and some basic internet things. And we got enough of these donated for each of our coordinators, and we just shipped those over. And we're having a training for all of our coordinators on these portals at the end of the month. So we have some additional technology getting to our coordinators. And we, in addition to the mental health project that Ella told you about, we piloted some art therapy, like Zoom art therapy sessions with a Jewish focus with our coordinators at the beginning of this year. That was incredibly successful. And I'm hopefully meeting with some people in the next couple of weeks who are interested in continuing to do some art therapy on a pro bono basis. So those were the additional updates that I had left off my initial report. So last call for questions. All right. So I will conclude the meeting by sending a special thank you to Barbara for facilitating the meeting, Sergey, Tanya, Ella, Asia, Zale, and Ben for being on the Theory of Change committee, Gavin and Galina and Shauna, for all of you for being here. For all of you who have supported us this past year and in past years, for all of you who have collected materials and sent them to us, thank you for all of it. We can't do what we do without you, and as you've seen, there's been a lot that your impact this year has been tremendous, and we could not have this kind of impact without all of you. So, so thank you for all of that. Stay tuned for more information about our 50 years of action coming up in April. We will need your support for that as well. We will be honoring many people who were founders and who have supported us along the way. It will be a brunch. It'll be lovely, and it'll be a wonderful celebration of the amazing, impactful work of action from the past, the historical past, and a celebration of what we hopefully will be able to do in our future. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Barbara to close out the meeting officially.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks to all of you who have participated in the meeting today, the presenters, and I want to give a special thanks, a shout out to our executive directors, Debbie and Ella, and all the work that they're doing to move us forward. It's really quite amazing, and I'm very proud to be a part of this organization. I don't know whether we need an official motion to close the meeting. Anybody know? I'm not sure. This is not the business part. I think we probably can just say our goodbyes and thank you for being here, and a happy new year to everybody as we go towards 2025.
Yes, may it be a peaceful. May there be a little bit of peace and safety for everybody. And again, thank you all for being here. And feel free to unmute if you want to just take a minute and just say hi or thank you to each other.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Debbie, for
Bye-bye.
running a great meeting.
Thank you.